Hello, this is Vicki Jervicus at the Greater Gainesville Chamber, and I'm delighted to welcome Casey Willitz this morning, or this afternoon, I should say. He is joining us as our incumbent for the City Commission District 3, and we're going to talk to him a little bit about why he's running again and what he wants us to know about him this time around. Casey, welcome. Good to see you again.
Thanks for having me, Vicki, and to the whole chamber.
Very good. All right. If you have a little personal thing or two you'd like to say before we launch into our 5 questions, we can start with that.
Just a little bit, because there's always something that people don't know about candidates and trivia, but I'm lucky to serve on my condo's HOA, and I've been the treasurer, I think, now for 3 years. And that's something that I think a lot of people have had experience of the frustration sometimes with an HOA. Condo HOA is a little different because, we share a building, and you got to get through stuff, difficult stuff, changes in law together. And it's something that I've found that I can commiserate with some people on. So it's just a fun thing that I've been doing the past couple of years on top of my job in the city commission. But it's just a fun little thing, not necessarily fun, but
I was going to say
something I can commiserate with people on.
Absolutely. Something I think you probably share with a lot of your constituents, which is awesome. All right, well, let's jump right into to our questions. The first one being, what is the role of the city commission in the community, in your opinion?
Right. So there's obviously the very, very legal, right? The very, very legal definition. We as a group of 7, we hire and fire our charter officers that are listed in our charter. Most people think of the manager, but the attorney, the auditor, the director of equal opportunity, and the clerk. We write the budget. That's the big deal. We pass ordinances. We sign contracts for anything over, I think, $100,000 and some other things. And we appoint advisory committees. All those things are the very, very literal legal. But beyond that, particularly with the comp plan, the comprehensive plan, we really set out a vision, on paper for the future of our community. In the comp plan, it's land use and land development code. And some other things. And some of that's big picture envisioning. Physically, one that came to mind is where we put car dealerships. That's one where we very clearly said we want them concentrated here. That's a little unusual because housing is kind of everywhere and small commercials everywhere, but sometimes you have to make those big decisions. Where's your industrial? Where's this? So we make those decisions after a lot of feedback from the community, but it does have to get put into paper because that's the state law. We have to have a comp plan, and then things go from there. But beyond that, and I talk about that because that's part about the vision. But I think a lot of our community, and it may not just be here, but particularly in Gainesville, our community, the voters, the residents, they really expect us to guard the great life we have here in Gainesville and to make that accessible to as many people as possible. So there is a real protect what we have, protect why we like Gainesville to begin with. And that comes through all those things that we vote on. But I think that's kind of an ethos of how the commission functions in Gainesville, to protect the great things we have, and to make sure that other people can enjoy it. So it's always looking in the future, but there's also kind of a foot in the past. And we do it with 7 of us. So it's sad that the charter officers have 7 bosses, but that is the way we're currently set up. The city manager has 7 bosses. I wouldn't want to be them.
It can be a challenge, certainly, for anybody to have that many people to answer to. All right. Well, now our second question is, what particular skills and experiences as the incumbent that you have brought to the office, and what will you bring continuing in the office?
So, I'm not an accountant. Never claimed to be, but I am a numbers person. That probably I have a background in geography as what I studied. So kind of the particular numbers and demographics, like the number of people, where those things kind of overlap. But I have become, through my life, through my work at UF, I'm a fiscal assistant at UF. And then I've served on the finance committee at the city commission. I'm the treasurer of my HOA, as I say, of my condo association. I like the numbers. I actually like kind of the budgeting process. So I don't know if it's a skill per se compared to an actual accountant or someone with that kind of training. But my appreciation for, you got to go back and figure out, like, okay, where are we going to pay for this from? What is this funding stream? How long does it last? Is this a funding stream that increases? Like, Social Security goes up every year, but your pension might not. And you have to build all that in, and figure out how is it. So you don't overpromise. And so I think that that attention and reality is something that I think I bring to the commission. I know if I don't bring it to the commission, I bring it at least to my work so that I temper my expectations. I came out of the commission years ago with more of the big dreams, but we kind of got ratcheted back a little bit by our charter changing. And with those changes, particularly in the general funds transfer or the government services contribution, we had to kind of re-envision. And but I've been proud that I've been part of that process, and really focusing in on what the people really want, that is not acceptable to lose, versus where they can make a compromise on what they expect out of a city.
Okay, very good. A good segue, I think, into the third question, which is, what would be your top priorities and projects if you're reelected?
All right. Well, so it's common. People are going to say it, but housing. The cost of housing in our community. We're not unique, but everyone, we feel it, And so the cost of housing, and I still think that we're in a bit of a housing shortage. A year from now, it may be a little different, but we are still butting up against not having enough of the housing that people need and want and can afford. So that's the number one, affordable housing. How we achieve that is myriad, but I do believe that part of that is that we have to tear down some of the barriers that keep the kind of housing that people want to be in, that there is an interest in, but it's hard to build. So that's the number one thing. The next thing is probably parks and green space, particularly in Southwest Gainesville. It's kind of easy to generically like parks, and we have great parks in Gainesville, and we have some opportunities to use our tree mitigation funds to preserve and conserve trees and wooded areas. But for me, it's really about my district in Southwest Gainesville, because that's where a lot of the growth is. We collect our tree mitigation funds largely in the Southwest. We just don't spend them in the Southwest. And so I've worked on the commission to get some of that on paper, acknowledging that this is not a great situation and that we need to move in a better direction. So achieving that in my district, build out of a park. We bought some parkland, seeing that through all the stages until it is actually developed as a park that can be used, whether it's a basketball court, children's playground. I'm not the expert on that. I just know that people need a space, and parks will help us figure out exactly what is best. And then as a third, transportation. Our transportation system should be available to all of our users safely and efficiently. Everything from trucks that get around town, all the way to someone pushing a baby stroller. And so how we do that, we run a bus system that helps bring people off the roads, help students get around more efficiently. To the safety of our roads, we know how we engineer roads determine how many people die or are injured on roads. So how we do that, how we make sure it's particularly accessible to as many people as possible. Again, in Southwest Gainesville, there's a lot of big roads in Southwest Gainesville, but we're missing some of the connectivity on just literally sidewalks to keep people off of the streets, keep them on the sidewalks. So I'm big concern with that, because a lot of the bus system runs in my district. So those are the big three things as issues that I've been concerned about and want to work on.
Very good. This fourth question relates to something that's, generated a lot of conversation, and it's only going to continue to generate more conversation as we head into the fall. What are your thoughts on the property tax amendment that's going to be on the ballot?
Mm-hmm.
Come November?
So in general, I think that it's, I understand why this is coming up. It's a big frustration. What people pay, let's just say single family homeowners, on their mortgage into escrow. For most people, they pay it. It's a monthly, it is what it is, but they know that the price of their home, their payment to their loan didn't go up. So they know it's insurance and taxes. And so I think people are really feeling it. I think the insurance is something that I wish the legislature and the governor would be a little more a little more motivated by, but instead, property taxes where they're headed. I think this is a bad amendment. I think it is poorly thought out. I don't think it is. I don't think it was well researched. We know it was not well researched, and it more than anything, it is going to be a shift. In Florida, we already shift tax burden away from owners of particularly single-family homesteaded property onto renters. We already know this. That's Save Our Homes and the homestead exemption. Listen, I love both of them. I have a homestead exemption. I have a Save Our Homes. I love it. But knowing that the neighbor exactly next to me who rents does not get that same benefit, I know that we already do part of a shift because we think that home ownership in general, it's a good thing. It makes communities more kind of stable and really kind of helps people get established in life. But this is going to be even more of a shift to renters, to poor folks, and people just starting off. When you buy a brand new house that is suddenly is fully at full evaluation, a brand new working class family, a 28-year-old with one kid, they finally, maybe they can buy. They suddenly pay kind of full freight, and their benefit isn't really experienced unless their property value goes up, and then it'll be somewhat protected. But also just renters in our community. So I think it's uniquely bad for our community in Gainesville because roughly 60% of the people in Gainesville rent in some way. That's what the data says, 62%. I just think it's going to end up being a tax shift because some things still have to be funded. And if it goes down, the easiest way to give an example, I think the library system is going to lose $6 million. There is no other funding mechanism for the library. I guess try to charge for your library card. I don't see, they're going to have to cut hours hugely or just close entire branches. I hope they don't close them inside the city of Gainesville. I will be advocating to keep those. But I think there will be a shift because we still have to pay for things like police and fire. And the mayor has said this before, and I agree. Like, who's going to be there to sign the checks for our policemen and our firefighters? Like, someone still has to pay the check because we still have to have our finance department to double check. We have award-winning budget, and we don't have audit findings, and it's because we put a lot of work into that. So who's going to do all those other functions? We have cut close to, I think, 160, 170 positions over the past 3 years. We have become leaner and leaner in Gainesville. And to a large degree, our staff is still producing the same volume of work. I'm proud that they work so hard. I don't know how much more we can ask of them before that kind of breaks, because there's only so much you can squeeze out of people. But I think this is something I'm urging people to vote no on this and look at other measures about how we can relieve homeowners. I would rather them keep charging for toll roads and figure out how to get that back to cities instead of saying, oh, Florida residents don't have to pay tolls. It sounds nice again. I don't think that's the method we should be doing to kind of balance the state budget.
Very good. Okay. And then the last question is, certainly in your case, exactly what you're getting yourself into if you get reelected. So what prompted you to run again to retain your seat?
So partially kind of an yet to be completely achieved goal, and that's about a park in Southwest Gainesville. We bought the land, but now we have this land. We have to see how much is wet, how much is dry, where can we develop it? Do we have the full funds? We basically set it aside in our wild spaces, public places plan, but that's not like in stone in an account. We said the next tranche of money we collected this year will go here or there, and so it's on our master plan, but to see it across the finish line. So one thing, I want to see it across the finish line, but also on how we spend our tree mitigation funds. One of the things I achieved was getting the commission to direct city staff to bring back to us kind of a little study about where we collect tree mitigation funds, but then where we spend it. And it showed a discrepancy. At the time, it was like 62% of it collected in my district, but only 2% of it spent in my district. Now there was like a chunk of like 20% that was kind of administrative, you have one head forester and you don't, they're administrative across the whole city. But I've already achieved a shift on the commission for people to pay attention to Southwest Gainesville, to not just say like, oh, they're all students. They're not. Or they all live in apartments. Oh, my condo is an apartment. We deserve just as much everything out of government as anybody else. Particularly the renters don't get a homestead exemption. Maybe they deserve even more out of the city. So I've just kind of shifted that, and I want to see it through to make sure that we make policies that always take kind of the least of us in mind. And sometimes the least of us are in Southwest Gainesville, working class people trying to get by. They're living in an apartment for this period of their life, or condos, townhouses, and whatnot. But it's also single family on the edges of my district. And when we kind of just ignore Southwest Gainesville because people think the city ends at the interstate, it doesn't. We have neighborhoods past. So that's one of the things I just want to. I'm afraid I ran last time because I thought that Southwest Gainesville gets kind of the short end of the stick. And I'm not done fighting for that to say like, no. And to make sure I'm nice enough on the commission and I work and I build enough coalition so that I can drag, all the votes I need towards this. And, we're going to cut a ribbon on a brand new fire station, not on the fire station, but, the grand double turning, whatever, in July in a couple weeks here. And it's in Southwest Gainesville. And the commitment to make sure that happened instead of saying, well, we can put that off again, can't we? Can't we put that off again? And we had to temporarily borrow some of that money just for a couple of years. We already know it's coming in through our infrastructure surtax. So we know exactly what year the money comes in. But to build two of them at once, we just needed to go ahead and borrow some of that money up front, and then we'll pay it off over, I don't remember if it's a 4-year note or whatever. But people could have said like, oh no, let's put it off. Oh no, let's put it off. And making sure someone steps up and fights us. No. The fire district the fire building in my district is a double wide trailer, temporary. It is 9 years old. There's nothing temporary about a 9-year-old building. It's just a very poor quality building at this point. So just that kind of focus of making sure that that Southwest Gainesville has that kind of fighter on the commission, and that we don't lose the momentum I've been able to build by building the relationships and bringing the data to the rest of the commission so they understand that we can't just ignore 1/4 of the city because you think they're all students or what people think, or they just kind of forget. And so I think it's partially what I've achieved at what I want to continue to work on.
Very good. Okay, well, now I'm going to open the floor for you for a little bit. If there's anything we didn't talk about or anything you'd like to expand on these next couple of minutes, are all you.
Particularly for the chamber. So, part of what the city does is land use. And there's a big chunk of land not even inside some of it is in my district, some of it's outside the district, that is zoned, I forget what's called business industrial. And there's development pressure to make that into housing, right? And I'm a pro. Listen, you won't find a more pro housing candidate than me, but jobs and commerce and small industrial, small manufacturing. If we say it's a big chunk of land, and if that becomes residential instead of I think it's called business industrial, which is kind of a light manufacturing, where's the next chunk of jobs going to be? No one's clamoring for it now, but in the new economy, I think we're going to have a lot more distributed manufacturing of different things and different, kind of sizes. Not everything is going to be a big, huge battery factory. So it's something where, the business community in Alachua, not just Gainesville, Alachua County, needs to be aware of that. We have a lot of housing pressure, but then if we go take this land and say, oh no, it's no longer available for industrial use, not heavy, light industrial, then that really challenges us to be able to move forward and have the jobs of tomorrow that are not here yet, but in the future. So that's one of those things that I'm aware of, and frankly, we need a little more community conversation about that. Unfortunately, it's just been so housing, rightly so, for the past pick a number of years. Great Recession, it was jobs, but I feel like we're changing back over. So I think we need to have a little more concern about kind of the jobs, because Florida housing market, if it softens a little bit, that will help. But then you still have to be able to afford a lot of stuff that isn't going to soften. The price of gas, the price of a car, those things aren't softening. Maybe housing will. And so we need to have that kind of shift back onto jobs. And that's something that I think it's going to take us a little time, because we've just been so worried about housing, because that's been the biggest stressor for almost everybody. So that's just something I wanted to mention, throw that out there. And outside of that, I just wanted to, make an appeal, I guess, to y'all and to voters that I'm somewhat of a boring candidate or a boring person. I don't, you're not going to see some sordid past with me. I'm not flashy. I don't spend all my money on this campaign. You won't. I've been kind of saucy online before. I mean, I get myself in trouble by kind of opinionated. I'm 44, to be a young opinionated person. But in my job at UF and my whole career has usually been, in the things I've done, it's really just being a helper. It's helping. I was a community organizer, worked on campaigns. Usually it's just helping. It's not like policy genius. At UF, it's just a helping role. I help my College of Medicine, Department of Otolaryngology. It is helping my doctors with what they need, helping my residents make sure they stay accredited. Now I help on the fiscal end. It's just helping everybody, dot their I's and cross their T's. And I see that on the commission as well. It's just helping. It's not flashy. I don't have a PhD. I don't have some huge, great, vast knowledge on this, that, or the other. I like maps. I challenge anybody in the city to know where stuff is or be able to look at a map and identify it. But in general, my ethos has been kind of a helper, and that comes from having a parent that was a teacher, and having a big family that, every kid has to help. And I was a Boy Scout and Eagle Scout, a helper. That's where that comes from. And so I know in commission, you got to be a little more forward. You have to, you're not merely helping it, you have to have your own things. But in the end, it's to some degree, being part of a team. And I pride myself on the commission. The current commission, far less vitriolic than it's been in the past. We work well together, and I think that's because all of us have that commitment, and I'm very proud that we have been able to get to swallow your pride sometime, be calm, particularly when the community is also riled up and they're pushing you in different ways and different people in different ways. But I've been proud that we've had a pretty harmonious. We're still having disagreements. We still have 4-3 votes. We have 5-2 votes. I probably, out of anyone in the past 3 years, I've been a 1 vote against things where I didn't feel like we followed the process, where we kind of went the easy way and we turned back or we broke a promise. I've probably been a 1 vote or a 2 vote more than anybody else. So I guess I'm not always helping in that. But anyways, so just a little like to share about kind of some things that aren't part of the issue, a little more about me, and I don't want to say my philosophy. It's just I've arrived here, and then I'm looking backwards and observing myself.
Mm-hmm. Very good. All right. Well, we appreciate very much you taking the time to talk to us today, Casey. And as a reminder, Casey is up for re-election for City Commission District 3. And I want to throw in my 2 cents from the Greater Gainesville Chamber that this opportunity is given to us. It is a privilege to be able to vote and make our voices heard. And so we want everyone to do so, and don't miss your opportunity on Tuesday, August 18th. However you like to vote, get out and get it done. Thanks so much again. Great talking to you, Casey. We'll see you out on the campaign trail. Good luck.
Thank you. On to August 18th.
On to August 18th. Thanks so much. Bye now.